police don't protect you. The government doesn't serve you. Change isn't made in a ballot box. You better get together with the people in your neighborhood and learn how to save yourselves.
Oh my goodness. So good to see you again, lovers to haters. I'm Aly.
And I'm Jim.
And this is Bozeman Antifa Dance and Theater Collective, or the BAD Podcast.
The BAD
Podcast. And we are your maybe favorite neighborhood anarchists in Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah, if you know any others that are your favorite neighborhood, let us know who they are. We probably won't like them, though.
Jim probably won't.
Yeah, you'll love them.
Mm-hmm.
They might not like me, too.
Everyone can have their different opinions. But anyway, we are back. It feels like it's been a long time since we podcasted, but it may not be a longer break than normal.
It's only been a few weeks. Because we did our dance video, and if you haven't seen that...
Yeah, I guess because that didn't feel like a traditional podcast to me, it feels like it's been a long time.
Correct. Yeah, we talked about half an hour in that podcast, and if you want to check it out on YouTube.
Yep, it is there to show evidence of what we do, one of the main things that we do right now.
I think one reason it's felt so long is just we've been living a lot. We won't go into details, but we'll go into some details because we're going to talk about my trip to Florida.
Yes.
But
well, let's get started talking about Florida. What was...
No 5 minutes of chit-chat this time.
We're getting down to business. You're being efficient or whatever it is.
Well, we actually are on a time
What
crunch.
compliment did Phaedra give you when we did a sacred space? That you were efficient or that you were a synonym for efficient?
I don't remember.
It was something like that. Never mind.
Oh, man, I blew it.
You got a compliment for something that we wouldn't normally think to compliment you about. And
I want to give a couple disclaimers. One is, usually I do this on airplane mode. I can't because my child's working. I never know when he's going to call me to pick him up from work. You never know. Sometimes he gets off work super early.
Jim values his other relationships.
Last episode, I said I wanted to beat him. I was joking, but
yeah. And you get nervous about having little sound interferences. So
yeah, and you couldn't actually hear him once I cut him out.
Yeah, but you're more nervous about people hearing the notification or whatever than
right. You'll hear a big buzz or whatever. But so that it could be choppy. We might have to break up the video here and there. So we'll see how it goes. But just let people know what that is.
So would you say that you went on a soul-searching trip to South Florida?
Yeah, so I just got back from vacation, late last week. I got back from vacation. I went down to South Florida.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, Rocky. That's a pretty bad Bullwinkle voice I just did.
Same here, because I barely even know who Bullwinkle is.
Me too. That's before my time. They were still showing like the reruns of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Yeah, Bullwinkle. I can't do Rocky's voice.
Good attempt.
So yeah, I took a vacation that I'd been planning. I'd wanted to do really since I broke up with DL. I wanted to do some vacation that was meaningful. And I thought maybe I'll go to Romania and see my friend in Romania. Well, that didn't work.
Nope.
Maybe I'll see my friend in Texas. Well, told me pretty quickly that wasn't a good time. So I wasn't sure what to do. So I just started searching the internet for things that might be going on in December, January range that might be interesting to me. And I saw some ecstatic dance festival going down in South Florida, and I wasn't wildly excited about it.
No, you were like, I'm going to send a tentative email, see what the vibe is.
keep looking for better things.
Yeah.
And I was like, that looks really cool, but I deep down, I would have loved to have found some mass protest that was going on, or a big tantra workshop, like something happening, or some other just cool event, or some friend that I could go visit for a week and really soul search with, and just really connect with somebody I hadn't seen in a while. So all of those things didn't quite happen. So I decided, okay, I'll go to this festival. So I sign up, I get the Airbnb, get the plane tickets. Of course, they're non-refundable. I get the car rental, all of it. And like a couple weeks later, I get an email saying, "Oh, we've canceled the festival."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And the person, the host of it, which is a place called J Star Studios, so this lovely woman named Star, wrote me back and said, well, we are going to still do ecstatic dance that night. So I was sort of hemmed into this trip where I had 4 hours of my trip planned, and I was going to be there for 6 days.
And I think that probably activated some anxiety for you, having your plans change and not knowing what you were going to fill the rest of your time with.
I don't know anybody in South Florida. My one connection to Miami was that's where I found out that I was going to be a father. Mm-hmm. Like, that's where we found my partner, my baby mama, which is such an insulting term, but my son's mother. And I were down in Miami, and that's where we found out that she was pregnant, which was kind of always a cool connection to the place. But I'd only been there really for a couple days in my life.
Yeah.
And this was actually closer to Palm Beach, but which are where I'd never been. And I had been to Florida the year before with my ex. So interestingly, the trip was going to be up at the same time that she and I were going to do an intimacy workshop in Florida at another friend's place on another part of Florida, which would have been amazing. So, just even the sad connections, happy connections to Miami, sad connections to what might have been that same time. Trip kind of falling apart, mental health breakdowns going on all over my life that probably resolved themselves just in the nick of time for the trip. Friends that couldn't quite commit to going. Not sure what I was going to do, and I'm not a spontaneous person.
No, you were not.
Right? I've been thinking about that trip since probably June.
And that's probably why you didn't find any mass protests, because who is going to be advertising about mass protests months in advance? Sometimes we would, but it would have to be around a big event, like the conventions, like the political conventions. Don't mind me while I get a little out of my peep. Disgusting.
That was neither here nor there. It was
great.
Okay. I can't speak for them.
Write in if my lentil picking disturbed you. I just want people to write in.
Or if you were turned on by it, I think that would
Bozeman Antifa@gmail.com. Also, somebody commented on how it's funny that I say Antifa instead of Antifa.
Yeah, but it's anti-fascist, so what difference does it make?
I don't know. I think they thought it was cute.
Yeah, but I also think, like, the idea of calling it Antifa is, like, it's not an Arabic thing. It's not like... Yeah. It's a shortened for anti-fascist, so we don't say Antifa.
If you put that emphasis on it, it actually sounds like you're someone who is against Antifa.
Yeah, it's really strange. But anyway, I think you can pronounce it however the fuck you want to pronounce it. We aren't fascist.
That's the fucking point.
Yeah. Good detour. So it was definitely a little unsure of a trip where I wanted to do something meaningful. I've done many solo trips by myself, but they're usually to natural places I can go hiking by myself, go up a sand dune and dance by myself. That feels a lot easier than going with a specific purpose where I wanted to actually connect with people, meet people, do meaningful things with them.
Yeah, that's an edge for you.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I've had meaningful things sometimes happen on my trips. There was once where I was in Death Valley and I met these young women. But
that was coincidental. You weren't seeking that out.
I was not seeking it out. I was on my own journey on that trip. And in this trip, there was no familiarity with the place, with the people, with really anything. And I didn't have great ideas. Like, I was looking for things and found a few things, and I ended up doing all of them, but and they all ended up being great experiences. But I was like, okay, I'll just go down and check it out. Luckily, the ecstatic dance was the first full day I was there. So at least I was going to get an early sense whether I was going to meet anybody there, and have that be a launch pad to other stuff. So it's a good thing I didn't plan it for the end of the trip, but rather the beginning of the trip. And that was always the plan. I thought, well, if I meet people, then maybe there'll be something else cool to do. Yeah. So that part was a good choice on my part. So yeah, I had a magical time in South Florida. Starting with, I did what we do. I danced, I did dancing by myself in public, not with you, but with just me, kind of stuff I would have done before I met you, but just kind of in our style. I put a playlist together. I danced on the beach and became a tourist spectacle. And like we've talked about in other podcasts, it was kind of the same old. People kind of maybe move their heads here and there from a distance.
But you had some good interactions, I think, even the first time you did that, right?
Yeah. Well, not so much the first time I did the dance. I mean, that was fun. It really grounded me. But once after I had lunch and then went back down on the pier, there was some live music going on and I was dancing. Then I had some interesting interactions with people. It was a nice start, like the singer at the dock was doing like adult contemporary covers from the 70s and stuff like that, and her song. So I just started dancing on the beach to her music, and she's like, she just thought that was great and said something over a microphone towards me, and I wasn't even in the restaurant she was singing. I was off on the beach. And people liked my outfit because I wear crazy outfits. So I wore my crazy outfits. Not these pants, but if you're watching, if you're on Spotify, I'm wearing some very colorful pants. But this ecstatic dance was incredible. We have ecstatic dance here in Bozeman.
Or we used to. It's kind of
right, because there's a problem, right, because of space. Yeah. This is another issue in Bozeman, of course, of large developers buying up all spaces and all the cool things we want to do.
There are countless issues in Bozeman.
Which is one reason we like to do things outdoors, so that it's a lot harder to take our spaces from us because we'll just go somewhere else if they do. Right. And it doesn't cost us anything. But it's still nice to have spaces in a place that has a lot of weather. Like Bozeman can. Yeah. But there's a bit of an ecstatic dance community here, and we're talking a couple. Like, there's dozens of people, but at any dance, there's usually a couple dozen at most, right? Usually you come to an ecstatic dance, and
and half of them are not great people.
Yeah, you said it.
Sometimes I'll say it.
There's always, I'm sure, stuff. I'm sure behind the scenes in Florida, there were probably all kinds of dramas I wasn't noticing, right? Although I seem to even sense it in Bozeman. Like, there were the dramas we had with people, but then you sense, oh, they're having dramas too. Like, there was lots of weird angst, I felt like, in the air.
Dramas.
All the while that people say this is a safe space, a safe place.
Only good energy.
We are a community. We have good energy. This is a free place for everyone. I believe the intentions are there. I believe they are good, and people mean it when they say that. And I'm telling you, it does not sink in me like the thing is a real community, or that the place is really safe, or that there's not a lot of weird vibes going on that nobody's quite talking about.
If you sprinkle glitter on a piece of shit, it's still shit.
And yet, if they offered an ecstatic dance here again, I'd probably go to
it. Of course.
And I've enjoyed several of them. It's not like they were just horrible experiences.
Some of them were pretty horrible.
Yeah, well, some were better than others. I had some good times at some of them too. But this one was interesting because I thought it was amazing all the way through. Their official count said 150. I think there were like 200 people. 200 people in this room. If you count vendors and you count all the people working there. And it was in this art studio, kind of like when we were in Salt Lake City, only it didn't look like that.
Yeah, it was a beautiful building then.
Yes, it was beautiful space in Lake Worth, Florida. And it was sponsored by J-Star Studios. It was featuring Ecstatic Dance Florida, which is really run by this lovely woman named Vanessa. And then there's another DJ named Barbara, DJ Barbie, should we go by, who had 4 hours of dancing. And it's not uncommon for us to go for hours at our ecstatic dance. But there were 200 people eventually in this room. And I was like the first person there just to be there. Yeah. Like it had no other function of being there. And I show up there and they're like, "Are you like one of the vendors?" I was like, "No, I'm here to dance." And they're like, "Oh yeah, great." Yeah. And so I go on the floor and I'm checking out the space and music's already kind of playing. And I just am noticing the room. I notice there's this woman painting in the corner the whole night. And I just start dancing. Like nobody's dancing. I just start dancing. And soon this woman starts dancing near me. Just really friendly person. And this person's DJ Barbara. And we had a conversation. I told her why I was there. And I said, "I'm looking for stuff to do." And she said, "Why don't you come to the after party with us? We're going to this Peruvian restaurant." And I was like, wow, like it's not easy for me just to ask people, like, is there stuff going on? Like, I just don't do that. I tend to be really shy. And so not only did I ask, but I was invited. And I found out, like, at that moment that she was one of the DJs. So I was invited by one of the people organizing the event to go out.
And I love that the two DJs were women also.
They were both Latina women.
Yeah.
Well, there were 3 DJs. There was Star was one of them. And then the 2 Latina DJs followed up. So
was the Star one also a woman?
Yes.
Yeah. So I love that they're all women.
All women. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
More female DJs.
They're all women, and it followed the ecstatic dance, kind of the wave of it, starting a bit slow and then picking up energy throughout and then lowering. Eventually there was even a sound healing, which was new for them. We're used to it. They always do the sound baths at our ecstatic dances. They had never done one before. Yeah. So I thought, oh, they're just doing the same thing we always do. So that was super special for them. And I was like, if there was one thing I like about ours, it's how she does the sound baths. Yeah. But anyway, it was still a really nice sound bath. And I just loved it. It was just people dancing. They didn't seem like there was lots of socializing and there was some stuff going on outside. But there was just this magic spirit dance. People were friendly. That people were dressed up some of them was dressed up as wild as I was. The dancing was as energetic. Like we always say, we go to places and we're disappointed. How many podcasts have we said we're the most vibrant people we ever see wherever we go in the country?
Countless.
And I was just among many other vibrant people. Sure, my outfit was incredibly crazy, but I was wearing my Mondrian colors, the abstract. I mean, people said, "You look like a painting." I was like, well, because I'm imitating a painting.
Yeah.
But I felt like I fit in. Like I didn't feel like I had less energy than people there. I didn't feel like everybody brought like a ton of energy. But there were so many men dressed in wild clothes. There was this woman wearing the most gorgeous dress I've ever seen. And she comes up to me and says, "I love how you're dressed. I love how you move." And I was like, my goodness. I was like, this person is wearing the most fantastic dress I've ever seen in my life.
Right. And people, regardless of what they were wearing, were showcasing sweetness and authenticity and freedom in their bodies.
Sweetness, authenticity, movement, and yet respect. Like, you're in a room with that many people, usually, like in Bozeman, lots of people would be running into me constantly. It was very rare to get bumped. It was, and if it did, it was very slight. It was like, I didn't see any hard collisions going on the dance floor like there normally happens. Like people were in their dance and yet somehow aware of their collective space, enjoying it. The energy's high. There were several, I would say dozens of people who never stopped dancing the entire 4 hours. Mm-hmm. Most people stopped here and there, but some of us just went the entire time. And yeah, there were little sweet moments going on all over the place. And the energy of that was incredible. Mm-hmm. The energy of wanting to be there, of dancing, and just the freedom of the movement. There was so much freedom in the movement. Yeah. And I didn't sense people were there with ulterior motives. Mm-hmm. I didn't sense they were there to fuck around with other people or get, or work out their dramas or score, I didn't sense there were all these players working the room. And the men keep their shirts on. People don't take their clothes off. And yet we're in humid South Florida. Yeah. There was some air, a little bit of air, but it was still pretty hot in the room. And it's so humid down in Florida. So you would think, okay, the clothes are going to come off, right? Especially the men who in society can just take off their clothes while the women have to keep their clothes on. No, that does not happen. And it's a completely sober event, too. Yeah. There's no alcohol.
I mean, the ecstatic dances that we've gone to are
I'm not saying that they're in every way different. There are some similarities. One thing that was different is because there were so many people, there was no opening or closing circles. Mm-hmm. There was none of the ritual, which I think some people like the ritual.
But it's just, there's no way to have real, personal moments and for each person to get the time that they need in most of the circles that we went.
Right. I feel like, yes, it puts super shy people on the spot saying you're safe, but you're not safe, right? Mm-hmm. There's the people who are part of the community, who kind of all know each other, who are used to it or more comfortable. There's the people who are shy. There's the extroverts who fit right in right away that everybody loves, but it all feels contrived.
Even with 30 people in a sharing circle, it feels contrived. Yeah.
You share your word as if you can say anything in a word, and then somebody doesn't say in a word and you're irritated because they're taking too much time, and there's all these things going on. And so watching someone like Barbara, who was so kind, who took time for so many people, I really observed her. She's taking time for people. She's still dancing. She's still moving, but she's checking in and she's checking in and she's checking in and she's checking in. And I'm like, oh, this is what's going on here. There are people who are holding the space by going one-on-one, and consciously taking the time to make sure that they're seen and welcome. And I was one of those people who felt seen and welcome there. And I think that was going on all over the place, especially by Barbara. But even in Vanessa was doing that. Star was doing that. I met Star. I didn't really speak to Vanessa there, but we've had beautiful interactions afterwards. And so I liked that. I liked that. It was it gave me ideas. I was like, okay. There are so many methods. There is sometimes a room for a circle of people, but there's also other ways that people can hold a space and not dominate. And because of that, nobody dominates the space. When there's a circle, you kind of know who's in charge of that space, right? Yeah. They're who's really in charge. You couldn't really tell. Yeah, there were DJs, but they didn't feel like they were any more than anybody else. There wasn't this big thing going on,
A radical example of relating to one another.
Yeah. So all of those things felt good to me. They felt like, oh, this is what I've always wanted. And I wondered if that vibe existed. It always felt somehow screwy to me. I liked it, but always just felt off. And this did not feel off at all. It was magical. And and after the dance, some guy shows up in a van. Some singer-songwriter guy shows up in a van and just starts singing outside. It's where did this guy come from? Nobody knew where he came from. Why did he stop here? This is not, it's kind of the middle, it's not the middle of nowhere. You're in an urban area, but why at this spot did this guy park his van and playing songs? It seemed pretty random. But then my stuff was over in the corner by the painter, and it was really cool to meet her. She was such a cool person. Her name's Melissa, and she was painting, and we were talking about art, because we've talked about how art can be like a prompt for other things. Like art could be a prompt for dance can be a prompt for art. That's one thing our ecstatic dances will often have, is people painting, doing other things going on as a way to inspire. But she was just doing that the whole time. Every so often I'd catch her dancing for a few moments, but then she'd go right back to her painting in the dark with fluorescent lights going. And she wasn't super happy with how the painting was coming out, because she was just really hard for her to see the colors that she was painting. But just being able to talk instantly with someone about art and process and feeling into that, and then embodiment, and like she was speaking my language. The discussion moved to tantra, and but of course she's busy. She's putting stuff away, and everybody's doing things. So it's like, we should hang out, continue this conversation. Again, not something I do. I don't just ask people.
So you were the one who prompted that?
Yes. I said, I was like, I love this conversation. Could we continue it? You know, I'm here till Thursday. It's Saturday. Could we find some time? And she said yes. She told me later nobody had ever asked her that before. Nobody had ever said, hey, can we just continue this conversation? You know, which I thought, oh, that's a little sad, but in a way I think, yeah, you're right. In our society, we have to have some other...
unless it's like a guy asking her out or something.
Right, we have to have...
Let's continue this over...
Right, so it's either a date or it's some other pretense. Like you have to be going to some other event together. And this was simply just to talk. So we did. A few days later, we had a beautiful afternoon on the beach just talking and hanging out, and we're still friends. So... Hi, Melissa, if you're watching.
Hi.
Might be too long for you're a busy person, so hopefully.
Thanks for being where you were at the time that you were there, and connecting instantly with Jen.
Yeah, and she's got some beautiful dreams for herself that I know will happen. So, she's now studying Tantra and reading things like The Art of Sexual Ecstasy and things.
You guys have influenced each other in a short time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that was already, high from this. The Peruvian restaurant thing didn't happen. It didn't have to happen. You know? So, how long have we been going on this?
We have been going, I didn't really check when we started, but it's 8:48. Probably 10 more minutes on this.
Okay.
Or even, even longer, a couple minutes.
Okay. So there was that. That was like a big thing I wanted to talk about. And through those connections, they told me about a drum circle, which was another magical event. A lot of the same dancers. So you can imagine if they have a beautiful vibe, they're going to bring that vibe into this drum circle. There were other people there too I'd never seen. Outdoors in Delray Beach, beautiful out at night, full moon going, 50 drummers at least 50 dancers, hundreds of people on the perimeter just taking in the scene and just dancing to the drums. And it was like cathartic. You just feel this release of energy. You see everybody else just radiating this joy, and it's genuine from movement, from others, feeling the joy of other people movement. It just builds on itself. And the drummer's going. And it's reclaiming something in human nature we don't typically have. And another thing I'll say about the South Florida experience that I was having with that was there's so much racial diversity in South Florida. Most of the time I was a racial minority as an Anglo-white person.
We love it. We want to be the minority more often.
And it was cool because it really felt, I still felt welcome, even though I'm a white male, English-speaking, non-Spanish-speaking male. And I felt welcome. And I'm like, why are our white communities like so weird about shit?
I mean, that could be a whole other rabbit hole.
Well, but it's hard not for it to be on my mind, right? Mm-hmm. Like, something in the freedom of bodily movements, something, it's not unrelated to being welcoming, connecting. And we live in I would say still most of Florida was still pretty staid and people in their lanes and not dancing much. But there are these strong communities of freedom that then manifest into kindness and welcoming, and who are open to genuineness in other people, whatever backgrounds they have, wherever they come from. Even though people were pretty surprised I was from Montana.
Yeah, they always are. Same here. People are surprised that I'm from Montana too.
Yeah, that I don't ride a horse or shoot a gun. So the other really magical thing I did was, so many magical things, but I did a night of tantra, which I don't know how much I want to go into that because there's some pretty personal things.
Yeah.
But one thing that, well, maybe I will. Like, I felt really touched inappropriately by a woman recently at a bar that you and I were dancing at. Just after we had podcasted saying nothing unsafe had ever happened to us while we were dancing. I felt pretty violated by being grabbed and forcibly kissed by a woman at a bar. And I had experience in touch with strangers that felt far more consensual, far more gentle, and helped rewire the story a bit.
Good.
And I felt I don't really want to talk about the person like that's their experience.
Yeah.
But I felt honored to be able to hold their experience that they were having, and that was. I have so much I could say about it, but it was really heartwarming as a male, again, as a white male, to be trusted as a stranger, to be able to not only hold an experience, but be part of a pleasurable experience for that person.
Yeah, I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah, because we think sometimes that intimacy is only something that gradually can build up over time with people we become friends with and close. And I've seen this so many times now that actually, if intimacy is not that hard, it
shouldn't be, right? Yeah.
It's not that hard if we're open and know how to state our boundaries, fears, and desires, and know that we can trust that the other person is not going to harm us and is there also to be a support. And you can get there. You can get there really quickly, somehow, some way, because I've seen it happen. If you don't believe me, get in touch with me, because I would love to share some of my own experiences more closely.
And I witnessed this too, just not in a tantra container.
Right.
I felt very spontaneously close to people in different situations,
right.
And I know what you mean.
Where you find yourself able to do things you never would imagine yourself opening up to, and it's not shameful, wrong, dirty, or foolish, or reckless. Like, somehow you're safe, and you end up being totally safe in those circumstances, and you realize this is the world that's accessible to us. There's not all this retraining we have to do to get there. You know, like, I
mean, we do have to actively deconstruct all of the programming that we've been forced to have that takes us away from that.
But I think our ideals are a lot closer than we imagine.
I would agree. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't go into those details, but I believe it, and I had another experience that validated that for me. And those are the things that make me idealistic. The things that make me realize, oh, wow, magic can happen like that. And we can have transformative experiences that don't move at a glacially slow pace. Hi, Rocky. Hello. Glacially slow pace. Glacially slow pace. I said it.
Good job.
Say that 10 times really fast.
I don't even want to say it one time. That seemed hard.
I'm sure you could. You're very eloquent with your voice.
Sometimes.
Glacially slow pace. I said it
You're
slowly.
getting better, yeah.
Feels like a bit of a tongue twister happened though. So I think that's pretty much what I got out of it. We did that one episode where you were in New Orleans, where you had a really good time, but you said people weren't dancing, so they are dancing in South Florida. And they're doing all kinds of
And they're
cool
probably
stuff.
dancing in New Orleans at times that are not January when it's rainy. And our friend Clara is in New Orleans right now, or maybe she got back already. But I'm sure Clara was dancing in New Orleans. So
Yeah.
it depends on just what you see and what you're privy to.
Right. Yeah, what you run into. Sure, I could have had a Florida experience where nobody was dancing. In some ways, I feel like I inspired a Florida experience where people dance. Like when I went to the South Florida Fair and just started dancing in public in a suit, and people started dancing.
Yeah.
So, and we saw that this weekend when we were dancing again in the park, and which we're going to be doing I do want to announce this, every Sunday at 1 p.m. here in Bozeman.
In Sir Optimus Park.
Main and Rouse. Mm-hmm. For those, even Bozeman residents don't know what Sir Optimus Park is half the time.
It's next to the Eagles.
Yeah. Across the street from the tea house. Sort of, right? Yeah. That little park over there. I described it, someone says, it's not that little a park.
Okay. Depends on how you define little.
I think it's pretty little. So every Sunday at 1 p.m., feel free to join us, and we have details at BozemanAntifadance.org. Mm-hmm. So we have other topics to talk about.
Yeah, we do. I don't think I'm feeling as chatty as you, so we'll see how this goes.
Hurry up, River. Save her. Cut her off.
We can have an episode where I'm reflecting and not jumping in with a million comments every second. But, you know, in the past couple of weeks, I have met some new individuals in my life who I know are very formative for me. And I have been exposed to their way of living, which has a lot of interesting elements to it. And I feel ultimately is very soulful and does align with what we do, just in a different way. And one of the things that they do is go dumpster diving. And so I won't give any details on who these people are, what they do specifically with the food, where they go to do this.
Hello, Bozeman police and all the Karens of Bozeman who are watching.
But I will give a disclaimer that I've been trying also not to say as much as I used to after listening to the podcast, but that's okay if I say I want to make it clear that dumpster diving itself is not illegal in the city of Bozeman, but loitering is. So, you can dumpster dive technically, but if an employee of a store or the police or anyone with some supposed level of power, which is of course imaginary, we know that, but if anyone sees you doing it, they will probably come out and hopefully just nicely tell you to leave, maybe yell at you, maybe try to enforce legal parameters around loitering. So
how does one define loitering exactly, right?
I would like to know that, because I've been told I was loitering for just standing on top of a parking garage and watching the sunset. Black people get told that they're loitering before they get fatally shot.
Right.
I would like to know why we cannot exist in some places and why some existence is more supposedly threatening than other types of existence.
It feels like just one of these catch-all phrases that authority can use to oppress people that they don't like.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly used in situations where people are actually exploring their autonomy and are existing in a way that expands beyond the restraints that we've been taught to exist under. So in the instance of my new friends who do this, it's something that they do in order to be able to cook for more people. Mm. And it's something that they use to ignite a creative process, because whatever they find, they then come up with an interesting meal idea around that. Mm-hmm. And they make incredible food.
Okay, so they're freegans.
Pretty much.
So
they buy some food, but very little.
Right. Okay. And what I heard you say was they provide this food for themselves, but also for others.
Mm-hmm. Friends, as well as those who have less access to food.
And that the process of doing this is also a creative, artistic process.
Yes. And they do it, they get together with other friends to make the food.
Mm-hmm. So maybe talk about that more. What is the creative, artistic processes that can come out of dumpster dive?
Well, generally when people meal prep, when people buy food for the week, they're thinking of specific recipes and specific meals, mm-hmm. and then they get the ingredients to match their preconceived notion mm-hmm. of what they're going to cook. In this situation, you can't be picky.
Right.
What you get is what you get, and then you have to figure out ways to make meals around that.
It almost makes me think of those Food Network shows where they get these chefs and say, you have to make dessert out of, like, artichokes.
The weirdest fucking thing. Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to get. They force it on you. In this case, you don't know what you're going to get because you don't know what is going to be in the dumpsters.
Exactly. Like, there will be a lot of tomatoes, so then tomato soup. But also, you'll find some bread. I'm specifically referencing some things that we made recently, and so, and there was also a lot of really nice cheese that got thrown out at another place, and so grilled cheeses and tomato soup.
I'm going to be a little disingenuous because I've done some dumpster diving in my life in the past too. So I actually would already have answers to some of these questions, but I'm imagining someone listening who has no idea. And I'm trying to think the questions they might ask.
And please, lovers, haters, do not think of me as a dumpster diving professional. I have only done it a couple times.
But how do they know that the food is good?
We talked about this. It's pretty much, not you and me, but I talked about this with them recently. It's mostly an intuitive thing. You smell it, you touch it, in some cases, with certain types of food, you need to kind of not eat any of it. It depends. Like, if a tomato has mold on it, they would say probably just don't use the tomato at all. If cheese has mold on it, you can probably just go a couple inches away from the cheese, from the mold, and you can still use the rest of the cheese. So there are some actual guidelines that they will follow when picking the produce.
Right, because they're feeding others. They don't want to make people sick.
Right. To my knowledge, no one has gotten sick from the food yet. And the thing is, we mostly can tell when food is good, and you open up these compost bins, because we're not going into the dumpster, generally we're going into the compost bins, and it is fresh produce. Like, it is nice, ripe bell peppers and berries.
Or sometimes, like, in dumpsters I've been in, sometimes the stuff was still sealed. Do you sometimes have that? And sometimes they'll still have the expiration dates and things like that.
So that would be in the actual dumpster part. Mm-hmm. We just go straight to the compost bins that have loose food. Okay. Sometimes it's in bags, like the cheese that gets thrown out will often be in a bag, and that's helpful. But it's just containers of produce.
Oh, that's
nice kale. Nice tomatoes, nice avocados. I got like 4 perfectly ripe avocados.
So it's mostly produce?
Mostly produce. There are some compost bins that have meat in them, so that's a bit less, up our alley. But there are full compost bins of just chicken breast.
Wow.
And so they'll go rooting through and try to find chicken breast that's only touched of the breast. And obviously really stringent washing procedures.
Yeah, that's such a different process than what I went through, because we would go to actual dumpsters, and they would go to places. We don't have one here, so we know that we're not going to say where they're going, but this was so long ago that I think I can say. But we'd go to places like Trader Joe's, and the food was almost all still packaged, so you could see when its expiration date was. You could see that it was still protected.
Was it extremely hard to actually get in those dumpsters, though? Because these ones have all of these different types of contraptions and things that you have to turn. And it is physically hard to get into dumpsters. I noticed this when I tried to dumpster dive back before with my ex and different ones in town. Like, they're very tall, they're hard to get into, and then it's actually very hard to open them and get in.
So these weren't, but of course, there was such a community of freegans, people knew where the spots were. In a city that large, some places compacted the food, some places didn't, but the food was like, maybe there was a dumpster you couldn't get into. So they knew the places that had good quality food because they were also feeding people. They wanted good quality food for the people they were feeding, not just junky food, just like getting good produce, right? Like the whole thought about that. And they were accessible. We did have to kind of climb in to the Odwalla dumpsters. But you could see, they were Odwallas, like they were in bottles. You knew that they were. Totally. The whole dumpster was Odwalla. Nothing but Odwalla.
Yeah.
So it's like a perfect dumpster, like to go in, and you can see, you'd have your little flashlights and you could see what the expiration dates were on them. And because it was at a warehouse, almost none of them were past expiration date because that was because they had to get rid of them, the stuff they couldn't get to the stores,
Right. And I will also say that I don't think the physical challenges of getting into the dumpsters is what prevents these people from doing that, because they're very athletic. They could easily scale this dumpster and just like throw their rope up there and climb it. But I cannot stress how much food there is in probably at some places, 5 or 6 full compost bins that is fully edible, that just has gotten thrown out because the store's policy of when to throw out food has occurred and not because the food has gone bad. Like, there is so much food in these bins every single night. New food in these bins every single night. They don't even need to go to the dumpster because there's so much nice food being wasted.
So what do you think about, do you have some deep thought about the waste in our society and why that happens? And too late.
Capitalism perpetuates greed. We need to feed a lot of people, and I don't think there's a perfect way to do that, but obviously corporations having so much control over manufacturing and distribution, and individuals having less control over being able to grow their own food and having accessibility to that is what creates this. We have needs that are very real, but we also have been made to think that having endless options under these systems is a luxury that we should fight for. And I think that is bred from this mentality of nothing is ever enough. We need more. We need to consume. And so on an individual level, I don't think myself or my friends are saving the planet by getting these vegetables, but they're just just fucking there.
Yeah,
they're just there. It's like when I've made dinners for potlucks before or for friends, I have often done petty shoplifting to get some of the things, and I will say that to help me be able to make the meal. And I think this is an even better way to go about that. Getting the things that we shouldn't have to earn. We shouldn't live in a society where we have to earn food and water and shelter. But when you do, maybe a little bit of creativity is called for. So no big sociological takes on this. I think the more we divest from supporting corporations, potentially the less they may produce, but I'm not even scaling it that far out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously no loss to the companies, I guess, except that you're not spending money on and creating more waste for them. I guess,
a lot of people would have to buy less groceries for that to have any impact.
Right. But it's sort of, it's like a parasite. It's like a parasite on capitalism.
When capitalism is the ultimate parasite on us. So it's like turning the game back on them.
Right. And people's situation sometimes calls for it. Sometimes it, some people have no choice but to try to find their food this way, and others, like you and your friends, are trying to help others to eat. That seems like very. We have a long history of celebrating Robin Hoods, but somehow if it's people going into dumpsters, it's not thought of as romantic as Robin Hood, but it's really the same thing.
It's really so romantic.
I'm not saying any more.
I think that's a good transition into our final topic, because I've been kissing somebody by the dumpster.
Nothing that identifies them. Be careful.
I've been kissing a person. How does that identify them at all?
By the dumpsters. Maybe
I go by the dumpsters with a lot of people.
Sherlock Holmes would have figured out who you're kissing from that information.
Well, Sherlock can try.
Sherlock can get
Write in if you're Sherlock and you know who I'm kissing.
I mean, I know who you're kissing.
How many times can I reference our email address? Do you check that?
Yeah, I get notified when we get, but it never, we don't.
No.
We would not really know. Very
Sad.
rarely. It's been several months since we got an email at bozemanantifa@gmail.com.
The email inbox is
And we're
dry.
Bozeman. We're at Bozeman Antifa on Instagram. And we may have a Threads account soon. Okay.
Stay tuned.
Which would have the same address. Okay, so you're kissing someone by the dumpster. So we've gone from South Florida ecstatic dance and community and connection to the not even tangential, the completely non sequitur of freganism. Mm-hmm. But now, in this freganism, there's now connection.
There's now connection. And there was connection before the freganism.
Right.
Yeah.
But
the timeline's murky.
But we're bringing the pieces of our podcast together.
Something
sort
together.
of.
Yeah.
Not really.
With me, I'm not seeing the strings tied mentally.
It doesn't. They don't really tie.
We're always talking about connection, so that's the thread. But
right.
I wanted to just mention that I've been exploring a bit more of my queer identity.
Yeah.
Because of a person that I've met who is non-binary, who a friend introduced me to. So we can't even say the friend. We could, but I'm trying to be
don't
private. I don't know.
Maybe next podcast.
I mostly don't want to jinx
Stay
it.
tuned, but because we've been on your romantic, or both of our romantic journeys through the years of this podcast, and
all of life is a romantic journey.
And you've made it clear from the beginning you were open to women, but every time we heard about someone, it was a man.
Disappointing, yeah.
And now you're talking about someone who's does not identify as male
or female.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting because in the past, I would have an attraction to a person who wasn't male, or I would kind of dream about what is this queer love that people are talking about. It sounds so magical. And then it would be really hard to approach or be approached by someone who isn't a man. It can be stressful and bring up what I call like bisexual panic, to have interactions with someone where you don't have like the past experience of how to have these interactions. You don't like the normal scripts that we follow, that we shouldn't follow anyway in heterosexual relationships.
It's not how we've been raised,
but
anyway.
It's like flipped. And it can be really scary. I know me and a lot of other femme-presenting people really worry about making people uncomfortable because we've been made to feel uncomfortable so many times. And people can tell me until the end of my life that I am probably not going to make the majority of people uncomfortable if I flirt with them or show any attraction. And I will still be worried that I'll make them uncomfortable. So
it can be hard to be bold enough or assertive enough to actually make something happen.
I've definitely seen that was true with women I knew who identified as bisexual.
Yeah.
That they had a lot of, like, they usually had men, maybe they were or weren't more attracted to men, but when they were attracted to a woman, they just froze up and didn't know quite how to flirt or what to say.
Sometimes makes you question, or has made me question, am I even interested in women at all? And that's partially a societal projection, because so many people will say that bisexuality isn't real. You just haven't decided yet whether you're straight or gay. Mm-hmm. So, all of that aside, I met a person who I feel like has been almost coming into my life several times. Another friend wanted to introduce me to them years ago, and we did, but just
more clues for Sherlock Holmes. So many clues.
I feel like I'm doing a great job at being vague. This is really good for me.
Luckily, we have all of 20 listeners probably to this episode.
And all of our listeners are probably from another country or another state.
No.
A good portion of them are from outside of the U.S.
No, the vast majority are from the U.S., but yes, we often we'll have somebody from somewhere else.
But very few listeners are from Montana itself.
Bozeman is still the highest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was other states and that no one here cared about us. But the fact is, and I don't want to say anything that makes it sound like I'm diminishing past relationships with men that were powerful. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, there were only about 2 past relationships with men where the feelings were this strong initially. Mm-hmm. And where I felt simultaneously at home, but also eager to move into my expansiveness as a person.
I almost want to start the song, You're So Vain. You probably think this song is about you. And wondering who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah, wondering which exes that was the experience.
Yeah, I don't want you to say. Yeah. I want them to think it's them or not them.
Yeah. And I will say that I have never experienced this sort of feeling in myself to be utterly playful and to put a lot of effort in. And I joked to my friend I would bike across the country for this person just to see them for 10 minutes. And that's an exaggeration, but also true, because I'm already doing things that normally I would have been a little bit too tired to do, or I would have wanted to be reserving more of my time for myself to do, or something like that.
Yeah, that sort of teenage in love feeling feels nice.
But it's not totally that, because it's also grounded. Mm-hmm. I also haven't lost myself. I also am not. So would a grounded person
bike across the country to see someone for 10 minutes?
Yeah, I would. And I'm feeling pretty grounded.
There you go. That's the answer.
There's the answer. And
I don't disagree, actually. I totally agree with that.
Thanks, Jim. And I know I mentioned to you, and you thought this was interesting, I think that I am enjoying physical touch a lot more in kind of just a casual way, in a sort of...
What? What's that?
That was what I'm doing now. I'm doing touches.
For the Spotify audience, she's touching me without my consent.
You gave me consent to touch you.
I did, the other day.
Not everything's filmed. We don't have a reality TV show. Dad.
I'm going to have to go...
the footage of the consent!
I need to go back to Tantra Monday nights in Miami and rewire my healing again after this. No, so you've been rediscovering touch.
Rediscovering touch in a different way. Or
discovering it the first time.
No, not discovering it the first time. I don't want to make it sound like I've had no intimate experiences before this.
So, but you're finding a new comfort in touch that you haven't experienced in yourself.
Yeah, I would say so. Because with male partners in the past where things felt very good with them, I would eventually, even early on, get kind of tired of the touching and be like, yeah, this is great, but go away. You know? That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And...
What if that gets told to you? Go away.
I'll respect that. I understand. Yeah. And maybe it'll happen, in this situation too, where I'll want that.
Oh, you will.
Who knows?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm allowing for all possibilities, truly. But, I mean, just them grazing a hand across my, shoulder or something feels like an out-of-body experience. And so, is it me coming into my queerness for the first time, or is it specifically this person, Probably a mixture of both.
Well, I mean, it probably validates... But I
have had sex with a woman before, and it did not feel like this.
Yeah, that was once, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just the queerness. It's not like just...
Right. Well, yeah.
Not a man.
I would think it would probably be mostly the person, you would think, because most people, by and large, are not going to... Who knows, right? Like what I just said about strangers. Mm-hmm. It's possible. But it obviously validates something in your queerness also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows? You're just discovering. Figure it out.
I'm just discovering.
Figuring it out.
But, yeah, it does feel really vulnerable. It does feel, instantly vulnerable. Mm-hmm. With my past male partners, the ones that were very good, it got vulnerable quickly, but it wasn't just, vulnerable right away, within minutes, know? And so I love that intensity, and that's really what I've been needing. And we just drop into that place every time we see each other. Mm. So it's really cool.
Sweet.
Yeah. Sweet. We love it.
So anything else you want to say about your discoveries into your queerness?
I keep losing shit. I'm really flustered. And I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Cool.
Do you have any final questions about that or about anything else?
About queerness? Or anything else?
Thoughts? I guess we can move into final thoughts.
Well, I don't have any about that topic. Just you seem really happy, and I'm happy that you seem really happy and excited, and just keep going for the things you love and want, and.
I will say that it is interesting that even though I have done a lot of work to know on a deep somatic level that I am deserving of pleasure, freedom, and joy, I still get old messaging coming up saying that this is too good to be true, that I don't deserve things like this, that this is too much happiness for me. And I mostly laugh in the face of all of those things because I think they're ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But it also is still interesting how long those notions cling on. They definitely stay for a long time.
I think a lot of people have that.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not allowing it to make me self-sabotage, but I am noticing that it's coming up quite a bit.
And those are the things that we do try to rewire through dance, through tantra, through dumpster diving, creatively cooking the things that come out, right? Through our artistic expression, mm-hmm. The things that we're about, dancing in public, and theater, and all that stuff. Improv, which I'll be doing on Thursday nights this month. If you want to see me at Last Best Comedy, 7 p.m. on Thursdays in February. But to rewire and to make us realize that we are worthy of all of these things. Mm-hmm. I think it took me a long time to feel that too. Now I just wonder if anyone else thinks I'm worthy of it.
Yeah, is that something that you really wonder?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I just think I'm not terribly attractive to anybody. So
I'm too hard to love.
I'm my own weird cup of tea. So.
I don't have a response to that because obviously I don't agree, but I validate that feeling because there are all these.
I mean, other times I realize I have I know I have a lot of good qualities, mm-hmm. but does anyone else see it? Right? That's the question. So, but luckily my happiness doesn't depend on people seeing me. I guess that's my final thought. My happiness does not depend on people seeing it, but it is really sweet when you can have those connections. And that's really what I came to before Florida, after it, and then witnessing the things that you're talking about the last part of this podcast.
Yeah. I think we'll always come back to that. Despite all the heartbreak, we are here for the unstoppable force of love.
Suzuki it. No, that won't mean anything to people.
That was me pretending to do a Suzuki.
Which means nothing to people because there's like, apparently Suzuki is a very common name and there are so many Suzuki methods that have nothing to do with the Suzuki method we've learned in acting.
I love that.
But yes, if you're interested in Suzuki movie and acting, you can write us at bozemanantifa@gmail.com and I'll put you in touch with the right person because it's not me.
We do have a contact for that. Anyway, I'm so glad that you found a part of what you were looking for in Florida. Of course, we can never fully find all that we're looking for in one space.
Well, I found what I was looking for in Florida, right? I exceeded what I was looking for.
But it's not all that you're looking for.
In life, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't find all that I was looking for in life.
You found Florida. A microcosm of what you're looking for in life.
Right. Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
And it's fun to...
Not to be diminished at all.
It's fun to be influenced by that here in Bozeman and see what happens. I'm going to be offering chakra dance. Hopefully. It's still being worked out a little bit.
I think it'll happen.
And maybe some tantra stuff. And we're still dancing in the streets. So we don't have 200 people to dance with us. But hopefully we can create our own really special vibe. We already have. Like, our vibe is different from anybody else's. Like, I didn't experience quite what we do in Florida either.
Nope.
So.
It's never going to be quite like this, baby.
We had such a fun dance the other day.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah.
Free hips! Yeah.
Free hips. And the beautiful dance. And so we'd love to have people. We had a dance the other day since our last podcast. We had 9 people at that one dance we had. Yeah. So we actually have more than you and me sometimes, which is really cool. And now we expect we'll have more than you and me because there'll be at least Sarah and probably some others from time to time. Yeah. So we're growing. That's what anarchists do. We grow our business.
Fear us, establishment.
If you are a Florida person, you probably didn't know I was an anarchist. Well, here you go. I'm an anarchist.
Who would have thought?
They probably figured that out at the freegan part. We're just talking matter-of-factly. There's my son, so that's the end of the podcast, everybody.
That's the end.
Ciao.
The police don't protect you. The government doesn't serve you. Change isn't made in a ballot box. You better get together with the people in your neighborhood and learn how to save yourself.